We are here today to try and present to you the 2021 budget presentation. It has been quite a COVID trying day, and we did this earlier and it was perfect, let me tell you, but it didn't upload. So here we are again, trying it again, and hopefully we'll do it as well as we did this morning. At least that's what legend says, right? We did learn a couple of things. We learned that you're not going to be able to see what we're saying. The numbers are too small. So we have prepared a presentation for you, and we will have it in your mailboxes so that you can follow along with this video. In addition, we're going to stand right next to the microphone so that you can hear us talk. So when we point things out, it'll be a little bit harder, but we think in the long run that'll be better. So here we go. So we start with this budget presentation or budget process back in March, and each of the department directors works with their individual departments and puts together their analysis of what the budget should look like for the upcoming year. They use a couple of tools. They look back 2 or 3 years previously to make sure that we are growing and the operations are growing and we're doing what we need to be doing. But we also look forward via our 10-year cash flow. That 10-year cash flow is very important to us because it gives us a financial benchmark as we move from year to year, and also helps us weather some of the storms that may or may not be coming. So for an example, we didn't know 2 years ago that we were expecting COVID, but we were responsible and provided the right amount of understanding and cash flow in the upcoming years. Very important. So the department directors go ahead and put together their assumptions, and then they send them to Craig. Craig then compiles them and puts them in a format where we take to the finance department or the finance committee of the board of directors. They then review it, make sure we're on the right track, and say, okay, good luck. So we start the budget process in around March to early April. And if you remember correctly, or remember that was smack dab in the middle of our COVID fund. So Greg really did an outstanding job working with the department directors, having lots of Zoom calls. Jamie Peterson from LCS also provided us a lot of support. And as a result, we have the budget that we have now. After we get the overarching budget done, we review it as a leadership team to make sure that we didn't miss anything. We have components in it. We make sure that we're planning for upcoming initiatives that we're working on. So the culinary restructure, the plant restructure, were all taken into account in this fiscal 2021 budget. After that, we make the recommendation to the board of directors. They then approve it, and they approved it on Tuesday at our May board meeting. And as a result, we have our 2021 budget. So it's very important that we have lots of checks and balances through the process, make sure we've got things in the right area, we're spending money in the right area. It's very important for us to be very fiscally responsible with the dollars that we have been provided, and we're very fortunate to be able to have been provided. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the revenue. So I am on page 3 now, if you're following along. So we know that our revenue comes from your monthly service fees. So that is why we feel it's very important to show you how and why, or how we are spending the dollars in the next fiscal year. Independent living is our largest area of revenue, and next year we are looking for an occupancy of 284 out of 304, which is an occupancy of around 93%. 30% of our apartments will have a second person residing in them per our budget. And to achieve our occupancy goals, we need to have 42 sales over the next fiscal year. This may seem daunting, and we are excited about what's happening in the marketing department with the development of the restructure, the sales director, and the strategic communication that we've been talking about. So we're looking forward to a really positive growth period. Assisted living we're looking to have 28 out of 29 of the suites occupied, which is 96.6%. And the health center, our average occupancy will be budgeted at 45 out of 50, which is 90%. Here's a graphic to try and help us picture what's going to happen over the next year. So what you're looking at is a graph. I'm going to try and point things out. Yellow is for independent living and blue is the second person fee. So you don't see a ton of variance in this independent living occupancy. You do, however, see that the first and second quarters are a tad less than the third and fourth quarter. And that was because when we were putting together this budget, again, we were in COVID, understanding that we were not allowing people to come into the community and therefore they couldn't move into the community. So as a result, we have 8 people waiting to come be part of the Friendship Village of Dublin community. And as soon as we feel it is safe for all of you, we will have them move in. But that's where you're seeing that. We also know that we're going to have to work for occupancy and have new people move in, so that you see the stair step up as we go through the year. The third and fourth quarters, we have budgeted at 287 out of the 304 apartments. Okay, Waterford. So if we looked back a year ago, we had 46 people living in the Meadows. And this year we have 31 residents living in Waterford. We have 2 apartments that have a couple living in them. So what you're looking at here is the payer source by type, I guess. The blue area is our life care residents. So we have budgeted that 27 residents will live in Waterford, and those people will be life care. We have 1 person budgeted as a private pay. Now keep in mind, we opened and we want to make sure that we are able to serve our life care residents first. So this may be our payer source, but it may not end up looking like that. So our priority is to our life care residents. So that's Waterford. Again, last year we had 46 people living in assisted living. This year, some of those residents have made the decision to live in the health center. So we went from 46 to 29, and the health center then got some new friends living in it. So we have, what you see here is the case mix of what's happening in the health center. So next year, our budget reflects that 32 of the residents living in the health center will be either private or temporarily, or excuse me, not private, permanently or temporarily residing in the health center. 7 people will be either on a Medicare stay or a Medicare Advantage stay. So when we say insurance, that's a Medicare Advantage stay. And then 6 of them will either be a private or a Medicaid resident living in the community. As we look through the next couple of years, this payer source may change a little bit, but we're very happy that we're able to accommodate and allow people to live in the health center if and when they need it. Also very important to recognize that we've strategically kept the census at 45 out of 50, and that was done in the event that something were to happen to one of our life care residents, that we would be able to provide care in the health center. So when you take it and you look at it from a big picture, it's pretty fun to look at. So what you're looking at here is our overall revenue, and the yellow portion here is independent living. For those of you following along at home, I'm on page 7. So yellow is independent living, and that accounts for about $14.6 million, or 68% of the revenue that we have at Friendship Village comes from independent living. The green portion at the top is our health center. That's about $4.4 million and accounts for 21% of the revenue. The red portion is Waterford. That's 8% of the total revenue and about $1.7 million. And then the last sliver here is home care, and that is accounts for 3% of our revenue. It's very important. Craig's going to talk about the expenses in a little bit, but important to note that the home care, we feel very fortunate to be able to provide the great home care here at Friendship Village, but it is not a revenue source for us. It's a very much of a break-even process. Okay, so we talked earlier about how when we look back, we want to just make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing. But it's also important that we look forward. So when you're looking at this graph, the yellow represents 2019, the blue represents 2020, and the red represents 2021. 2017, 2018, 2019, we had several new members of the community move in. So we opened the flats in Riverstone. So that's why you see the uptick in the revenue there. And then for assisted living, remember we went from 46 in 2019, 2020, we were gearing up to open up Waterford. So we strategically stepped that down. And then we have 29 suites in assisted living. Conversely, you can see the little uptick in the health center here, and that is reflective of the extra people living in the health center due to the master plan. When we look at this in a couple more years, what we're going to see is that the assisted living community is going to have some higher marks on this side because we'll open up the memory care, which is 27 additional suites, in about a year and a half or 2 years. Conversely, the health center should stay about even, but the payer mix will change a little bit. So with that, I'm gonna have Craig talk about expenses, and he's gonna start on slide 9.
Thank you, Rita. So the largest part of our expenses as we talk about the side of the ledger that is our outflow is our full-time equivalents, basically our associates. And FTEs stands for full-time equivalents. So in particular, a lot of our culinary department, a lot of our servers do not work a full 40 hours in a week. We have upwards of 300 associates on any given payroll, but roughly 210 or so, 208 in our budget for 2021. In terms of the wage increase, the merit increase on an annual basis, each of our associates, the typical increase is 3%. That's been that way for several years here. We did do a larger wage adjustment last year, led by Angela and our board HR committee, to the tune of about $175,000 in total, to bring some of our hourly wages closer to that $15 an hour mark that you hear in the general public as being kind of the minimum wage anymore. It's not the actual minimum wage, it's kind of the living wage that's out there, in particular with Amazon and the warehouse and some of our other competition. Only one FTE change for next year's budget, and that's in our IT department. We are adding a new position midway through the year in January of 21. Most of you know Kyle Meister left in March of this year. We extended an offer last week to an individual and he accepted. He will be starting in the latter part of June. So we're going to let him get his feet on the ground for a few months. And then again, we have that position budgeted for January after he takes an assessment of his department. And then the only real area that's outside of what I consider the normal increase other than the 3 to 5% range is not only our health insurance, which is listed here on the page we're looking at, page 9. Health insurance of 10%. Like many companies around the country, we struggle with health insurance costs. So we made the decision, this will be, starting July will be our 3rd year, we are self-insured for health insurance. So basically what that means is we pay for all the individual claims. We obviously insure ourselves at a maximum number. And so that's what we have, 10% increase here. This is our 3rd year in a row of 10%. We had been receiving 20 and 30%. In fact, in my 6 years here, our insurance costs, our health insurance costs have not quite doubled, but obviously that's not sustainable to pass on to you in terms of rate increases that we would have continued that trend going forward. The other thing that's not listed on here in the insurance realm is our property and liability insurance. In the COVID era, there's a big concern on the liability side, especially on the nursing home side. Granted, that's a smaller population for us, but there's a big concern the liability insurance costs have spiked. So we saw a double-digit increase on our liability side as well. Next page then, we're going to kind of graphically show you, for those that likes to look at the charts, and I will read this in a clockwise formation, and I believe Rita's going to come up and point out some of these, but we'll start on our right hand side. So we'll start at the 12 o'clock hour and work our way clockwise, but obviously the biggest yellow on the right hand side, as I mentioned earlier, is our wages, benefits, and then the taxes that are related to those is a little over $11 million. That accounts for about 52% of our budget is tied up in associate wages and related benefits and taxes. Bottom then at basically the 6 o'clock hour is our food costs. Anybody that wants to know what we spend on food here is just over $1.4 million in food. About 7% of our budget is related to food. Next then, as we go to the 7 o'clock hour, as we continue around, is the pink. That's all of our utilities, so gas, electric, water, sewer, Also, our television is in there, our phone is in there, our internet is in there as well, so that's all utilities for the village. Next, a little larger piece, 8% is our real estate taxes. For those of you who came to the budget talk last year, you heard that our real estate taxes had basically doubled with the Riverson and Flats, which was a lot more than we had anticipated. In addition to that, some of you may not know, the state of Ohio does charge a bed tax for all beds in a nursing home. So our 50 beds in the health center pay a daily bed fee over there, better than $13 a day, which is about $250,000 when it's all said and done. So those two together, about $1.7 million or 8% of our budget. The next little area there is our insurance, legal, and professional fees. The insurance I already touched on. Obviously, we do have some legal and professional in there as well. That's 2% of our budget. Rita mentioned home care earlier on the revenue side. This is the break-even piece of that. This is the expense side. On home care is about 3% of our budget. Moving on up then, I guess, to almost 10 o'clock on the dial will be our health center ancillaries. That's largely therapy that's provided out of our therapy gym. We contract with a therapy company to do our speech, occupational, and physical therapy. In addition to that, drug costs are in there. Is probably the next biggest portion of the ancillaries. For all of our skilled residents that Rita mentioned, those 7 residents, we do pay for drug costs when you're over there on a Medicare or a skilled stay. Next one then, moving on up, is our repair and grounds. That's about another 3% of our budget, almost $600,000, $593,000. I'll leave a trivia question for later, and I guess maybe when we next can meet in person. I know Rita likes to do a little bit of trivia now and then again, but we'll let you guess as to how much Andy and his team might spend in our annual flowers that are currently being planted. In addition to that, also inside of there is the annual mulching that's done early in the spring. So that's, in particular, the mulching has increased as we've got more and more nice beds around the campus. Marketing then, 2%, as we're almost till 11 o'clock, I guess. 424,000 or about 2%. That's everything but salaries. Our salaries are over there in the yellow, so that's all of our outside direct mail pieces, commissions, postage, the events that we hold that we have not been able to hold the last couple of months, but the events that are held here on campus is about 424. And then everything else, which is largely supplies. Another trivia question, you might be surprised how much we spend on linens in particular, so those nice napkins and tablecloths that we send out each week to be laundered. That's in there. So that's all that added together is about $2.8 million. Our next slide then it gives you that same graphical form but puts it in departmental. And again, I'll start at the 12 o'clock hour and work my way around. G&A in the yellow is our biggest department. We've got several of our department leaders that are in there. The biggest piece of that is our real estate taxes are in there. Our marketing budget is in there as well. So again, probably almost half between real estate taxes and marketing go in G&A right into those two line items. Next then in the blue is our culinary of almost $4.2 million, or about 19% of our budget is culinary. Moving then on down to the bottom, plant is about $3.4 million, or 16% of our budget. Community life is next in the green. About 3% of our budget's wrapped up to Jeannie and the wellness team, as well as activities. ESS is next, so that's all of our housekeeping, etc. there, $1.2 million, about 6%. Health center is the next biggest piece. I guess we'll call that red. About our 9 o'clock hour, 19% of our budget is related to the health center. Assisted living as well, as we move over there next. $1 million, just shy of $1.3 million, or about 6%. That's a budget that will increase next year, or I guess it'd be 2 fiscal years as we open the memory care unit. And it also did decrease slightly this year, as you might imagine, taking care of 29 residents instead of 46 residents. There's somewhat a reduction in cost there. And then lastly, again, we already saw the home care piece in the previous slide, but home care at $727,000. I guess one more small point in the wellness piece for us, that's our COPC clinic, as well as Ava, our resident navigator, is housed in our wellness department. Our next thing we want to highlight is some of our capital expenditures. The board approved a $2 million capital budget, and that's in addition to what we're going to spend for our master plan construction, but this is for routine capital expenditures. But some of the major highlights for us this coming year, We're going to continue our corridor/hallway renovation. So I believe it's 2 additional floors in the north area are going to be completed, as well as we are going to replace the north chiller that's been highly expensive here over the last several years. And for those of you that live down there know, especially on the first few hot days of the summer, we usually have some repair, and that's a significant expense. We're going to replace that chiller in the north. New bus. We've had some problems with our bus in the last year or so, a couple of breakdowns, and it's not able to be fixed at this point. So we are going to be purchasing a new 40-passenger bus. In addition to that, a new home care vehicle when they provide their transportation. You may or may not be aware, we do have a copper silver that we put through all of the water, the piping system here to fight Legionnaire's disease. So that will be going into our Waterford piping. And then lastly, the one thing of our master plan that's not in the master plan is we decided a year ago to take all of the IT equipment out. So there was about $750,000 in this year's capital budget, and about $250,000, $250,000, just shy of $250,000, is in next year's capital budget for all the master plan items related to IT. Turning it back over to Rita, she's going to talk a little bit about what we've done on COVID.
So, we have had lots of feedback about COVID and how that impacts the fees and moving forward, what that looks like. So, I just want to say that we're very understanding of this. COVID has not been easy on anyone, and we are so appreciative of everything that you've done and gone without, and that is not to be taken lightly. With that being said, while things have changed, your apartments are not being cleaned. You can't go to the dining room. The fitness center is now open on a minimal basis. Those things have changed, but our operations haven't. And we have been very fortunate that we have outstanding staff who come to work every day to help us keep you all safe and keep us all safe from this. So while your apartments have not been cleaned, we are doing some additional things. We are disinfecting this health center walls every day. Literally the walls. Your hallways are being cleaned. Your hallways are being disinfected at least twice a day, sometimes more. Your meals are being delivered to you in your apartments. Those types of things. Through all of this, we have not laid off any associates. So keep in mind that 52% of our expenses are our associates, and we are very fortunate for our incredible associates, and very fortunate that we've been able to make sure that they can sustain their lifestyles through this COVID process. The other thing that I think is important to keep in mind is that there are duties such as the mail, for example. Early on, the mail team, the USPS, came to us and said, we do not want to come in your building. We do not want to get people sick. And will you deliver the individual mail? And we said, well, sure, give us the keys to the mailbox. And they said, no, you can't do that. So we have been delivering your mail to you individually to each apartment, which is taking a team of people at least 30 hours a week. We've gotten more efficient as we go, but it's also taking our landscaping team and also Anna and Lulu several hours a day to deliver your mail. And we feel very fortunate that we're able to do that. The other piece of it is the meal delivery. So while you're only getting a couple of options, we hope that you're enjoying those options. It's much more difficult to deliver your meals to your door versus you all coming to a centralized location for meals. So there have been, while there are some savings in perhaps only offering 1 or 2 meal options, those savings have also been outweighed with some of the other challenges that we've had to face, and I think we've done a nice job, or we hope we've done a nice job to keep all of you happy and entertained. Jeannie and her team have done an outstanding job with your daily newsletters, and that's just a perfect example to show you that there's a lot of work behind the scenes to keep the ship going, essentially. Also, PPE, I feel very fortunate to be at Frontier Village of Dublin, where we can spend $90,000 so that if and when we do have an outbreak, we can safely care for our associates so that they can safely care for all of you. So very, very appreciative of that. With that, it is important for us to go to the next slide, which is that effective July 1st of this year, we have recommended to the board, and they have approved a 4% rate increase for assisted living, health center, and independent living. Ohio Department of Health requires us to give a notice of 60 days for health center or assisted living. So for those of you who live in assisted living or health center, you should have gotten a letter in early May, end of April for that. We are looking at a 4%. That is what we will be passing, or effective July 1st. For private pay and life care, and also the meal cost will increase by 4%. Independent living follows assisted living and health center, so your monthly fees will increase 4% along with the second person fee. So with that being said, we hope that you've enjoyed this presentation today, and we typically would have a question and answer period for this time, but because we can't be all in a room together, we are asking for your help. So we would like you to send us your questions, your comments, your feedback. We know how important that is. Hopefully you know how important that is to us. So if you could send it to the covid19@fvdublin.org. Craig and I will get back together next week. We'll compile all of those and we'll do a question and answer so that we can provide you the answers to all of your questions.
Yeah, I would encourage you, if you're thinking it, there's probably 10 or 20 other residents who are thinking it as well, and I would say no question is off the table. We'll do our best to answer anything that's sent to us. So I would encourage you to do that, and we'll put another little presentation together for next week and answer questions since we can't do it in person.
So we hope that you enjoyed this presentation, this very unconventional COVID presentation, and we look forward to your questions and your comments, and thank you very much.